Hello, good day to one and all. This is Miss A. Krishna Sundar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, KAHM Unity Women's College, Mancheri. Today, we are going to discuss the question answer session of the poem titled as On Killing a Tree, written by Gieve Patel. We had already discussed the entire poem in the first video lecture, part 1, where the 4 stanzas of the poem have been discussed in detail. So here we start with the question answers. So coming to the first part of exercises, question number 1, in which collection was a poem on killing a tree originally published? It was published in the collection named as Poems, which is option number A. Question number 2, what does the word hide mean in leprous hide? So here the answer is skin, which is again option A. So moving on to the next session, answer in a sentence or two. Question number 1, comment on the opening line of the poem. In the very first line of the poem, the poet discusses the difficulty in killing a tree. It is not easy to kill a tree with one quick jab. One quick jab means one severe or sudden blow. Question number 2, why does the poet say that a simple jab of the knife will not kill a tree? It is not so simple because the tree has grown through years of connection with earth, absorbing water, sunlight, and air. Now moving to question number 3, why does the poet try to teach us how to kill a tree? Without destroying its roots, a tree cannot be killed. A tree regrows. So with this poem, the poet is ironically depicting his anger towards the selfish motives of men. What does the poet say of the resiliatory power of trees? According to the poet, nature has the power to get back to life. As a result, the bleeding bark of the tree will heal and it will grow back to its former size. Question number 5. What does the poet mean by anchoring earth and earth cave? Within these lines, the poet tries to bring a never-ending connection between the earth, Mother Earth, and the tree. The earth and its cave acts like a womb protecting the roots of a tree. This relationship between the tree and the earth is pictured as a bond between a mother and her baby. Question number 6. What does a poet mean by the strength of the tree exposed? The strength of the tree lies in its roots. Therefore, if you want to kill a tree, you have to snap out the roots, the very source of life and strength for the tree. Question number 7. What does the poet mean by the last line, and then it is done? The last line depicts how human beings succeed in the process of killing a tree. It also reflects how nature fails and how nature silently tolerates the cruelty of man. Question number 8. What is the tone of Patel's poem on killing a tree? The poem begins in a dispassionate tone. He is sarcastic when he describes the entire process of killing, and he narrates it in an ironical way. Question number 9. Comment on the imagery bleeding buck. The watery fluid that comes out of the destroyed tree is compared to human blood, and thereby he equates the death of the tree with the death of a human being. So moving on to paragraph questions. Question number 1, the step-by-step process needed for killing a tree. So all the answers required for paragraph questions 2 had been already discussed when we went through the earlier session where we had gone through answer the questions in a sentence or two. So I'm not repeating the very same points. I'm just giving you bullet points, which means you have to expand these points into one or two lines. And definitely this will give you a huge paragraph which is necessary for the question. So the entire poem is about the process of killing a tree. So the poet's voice here is in fact against cutting trees. So you can mention how he comes from the green movement and how his writings had always reflected the theme of environmental protection. So he starts by saying that a single jab of knife is not enough to kill a tree. Because if you do a simple cutting of the tree will regrow because that is natural and that is a natural power of this earth. So you have to cut down the roots because the very source or the very life of the tree lies in its roots. So how can you cut down a tree by cutting down the roots? And then he narrates the huge, tremendous process by suggesting that it has to be roped, pulled, and tied. And then comes the next part. Even after the tree is killed, there comes scorching, choking, browning, hardening, twisting, withering, etc. So even after the death of a tree, the tree is not let free. The tree continues to suffer even after cutting it off. So this is how he describes the step-by-step process of killing a tree. Moving on to the second question, why is it not an easy job to kill a tree? So this is again a repetitive question because a tree grows within a huge span of time by consuming everything around it, the sunlight, air, water, etc. And its roots become very strong. So it becomes a part of Mother Earth. You can mention the association, the deep bond between earth and trees. So moving on to question number 3, comment on the language of the poem. So the poem starts in a dispassionate tone and it goes with sarcasm and irony. So if you look at the language, you can see some particular words are used by the writer like jab, hack, chop. So all these are negative words which give the meaning like cutting, chopping, etc. And he mentions certain similarities with human life. For example, he uses the term bleeding buck, where bleeding is not literally associated with the trees or these green living beings. Now I can look at the terms that he brings out: roped, tied, pulled. These are not very optimistic or positive kind of terms. Again, the last part: scorching, choking, browning, twisting, hardening, withering. So all these are different processes through which the suffering of the tree can only be increased. And then he concludes the poem with the last line, and then it is done. So it's a very powerful and evocative language that the poet is using. Moving on to question number 4, what is the message of On Killing a Tree? Now, the main message here is related with the damage done to our planet, Mother Earth. And he's also giving us a writing on the wall that it is high time to think about this. It is high time that humanity should rethink on this deforestation. A change in attitude is necessary. This is what he says. Throughout the poem, he is discussing the different processes involved in cutting off a tree. But in fact, he is giving an indirect message that this kind of a deforestation is definitely going to affect us in future. If not us, definitely our future generations. So we have to make the earth, our planet, a habitable place for the future generations. So now moving on to the essay questions. On Killing a Tree describes man's cruelty and violence to nature. Discuss. So you can mention the entire killing process which reflects man's unending greed. At the same time, how nature has a power of resilience and how nature can always return to life. Now, question number 2, how does Patel employ irony as a poetic device in on killing a tree. So initially you have to mention what is irony. You can start with this term. So irony is an expression which indicates just the opposite meaning. If you go through the poem, you can see the entire poem is about killing a tree, the different steps involved in cutting it off. So the discussion is on killing a tree, but actually the poet is against it. He is advocating something against this deforestation. So the entire process of killing is actually done with a graphic picture. And he also describes how the root is pulled out, and he goes on to explain the post-cutting process like hardening, browning, choking, scorching, etc. So through this poem, he's actually giving a very strong message to the society that trees should not be cut down. Trees should be preserved. Only then our future generations can survive in this world. So with this, we come to the end of this part. So thank you very much for your patient listening. If you have any doubts, queries, suggestions, or if you need more explanation, please feel free to connect with me in my email ID. So thank you very much. Thank you.